Finding success for me, I've been through transitions of that and realized success is not always having a big fat wallet or hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. Yeah, it's more to do with you connecting with people, and the people are feeling your vibe, and you sort of realize and understand and don't take it for granted that it's the people that have made you where you are. So the moment I see people making me where I am and airing their views and their values about what we do and what we do, I feel that kind of, I weigh success in that kind of way. How people relate to me, basically.
Here we are today with none other than David Hinds, plays guitar and sings in the band Steel Pulse, Grammy Award, reggae band, amazing legend on the podcast today. David, so glad to have you here. For everyone out there listening, Steel Pulse, they're about to go on tour with Lettuce, so definitely check out the tour dates in the description here. And yeah, David, to start this off, man, thank you so much for joining me here. How you doing today?
I could always be better, but I give plenty thanks.
I want to start this off talking about the core reason that, you fell in love with music and ultimately what it is about music that you think led you to devote your life to it.
I mean, almost everyone falls in love with music, put it that way. So I've always been in love with music, from the early years when it was blue beat, ska, and all those kind of music that came over from Jamaica via my family, is what I'm saying. But playing the music I do play all started when I started to listen to things that were sort of politically driven, politically orientated. Didn't know they were politically orientated at the time until you start growing up and realizing that there's more to what the songs were saying. They weren't just songs anymore, where you sort of rhyme words together. It's all about, something really happening, the event, the situation, the emotion that is, needs to be looked into. So I started to go in that direction, so to speak.
So really, music was a form of almost like activism or cultural commentary for you.
Yes, that's what by the time I got to 13, 14 years of age, it was evident that was the kind of music I preferred. There's all kinds of songs playing on the speakers, in the discotheques or whatever. But the ones that was always ringing home to me were the ones that were politically driven, had some kind of, sentiment attached to it.
Like driving forward some type of revolution almost.
That's right, exactly.
How would you say that the process of writing music and performing music is almost like a spiritual thing for you?
Most definitely is, because sometimes when I'm writing, it's as if you're outside your body. There's that outside body experience one gets. And when you finish writing it, executing it as a song, you say, hang on, how did I manage to get these kind of lyrics put on this piece of paper saying what it says? So it's in many ways, it's not calculated. It's something that just flows, is what I'm saying. Because there was no intentions at first to write music where I'm going to write myself a hit, especially in the earlier albums that we've done. That nothing, when you're familiar with music, you got the chorus, verse, chorus, verse. When we wrote songs in the earlier years, we didn't know anything about verse and chorus, 8 bars here, and you come with another chorus. By the time we got to the third album, we're saying, hang on, that's what it's really about. Because we started to have producers now that were saying, hang on, you need a break here, and you need a chorus here. And we're going, oh, is that how you do it? We were just saying, hang on, this is how we feel. So in the early years, there'll be one chorus, another chorus comes around about 3 minutes later in the song. And, standard pop music or music as we know it, you don't have choruses in between verses, that length of period of time, is what I'm saying. So we learned the hard way, tempos and everything else. We weren't familiar with knowing that song needed to have a particular type of tempo for it to be rocking as a rhythm. We just did it by the heart and the little we knew at the time as musicians.
You mentioned, this feeling when you're writing music where however long it took you to write the song, and it feels like it went by in like the blink of an eye, like an out-of-body experience kind of. I'm so intrigued and curious about how someone can like open themselves up to that kind of creative moment where you're just kind of overtaken by an idea. Like, obviously it's not something you can so easily like try to do, to just, okay, here I'm going to sit down and, like you said, in verse, chorus, it's not that simple. What advice can you share about what you've learned with getting yourself into a state where you can be your most creative self?
It's usually waiting for nightfall. And yes, when everybody's gone to sleep and you're in your own elements, it's you and hearing silence, is what I'm saying. And then you start to make the movements and you start, imagining that journey for that particular song. And oftentimes I've sort of woken up out of bed out of my sleep and decided to put pen to paper. It varies. Varies.
Jumping just a little bit to the side, as an artist, as a musician, what's most important to you in terms of how you define success for yourself?
Defining success for me, I've been through transitions of that and realized success is not always having a big fat wallet or hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. Yeah, it's more to do with you connecting with people, and the people are feeling your vibe, and you sort of realize and understand and don't take it for granted that it's the people that have made you where you are. So the moment I see people making me where I am and airing their views and their values about what we do and what we do, I feel that kind of, I weigh success in that kind of way. How people relate to me, basically.
I love that, by the way. Like, you're trying to measure success in terms of dollars. Like, that's the myth given to us all. And, I love your answer on connecting with people. I'm curious to hear from you, like all the different bandmates and managers and artists you've collaborated with. What personality traits, what characteristics do you admire most in these types of people you've worked with?
I would say patience. I would want to say that's what I'm looking for, where someone could see through, or play out a situation. And sometimes it can become frustrating, and it requires a lot of patience because a lot of miscommunication at times. And not everybody has time to resolve a situation. So I think that would be the common thread with all the entities that you've mentioned: band members, management, and collaborations with anybody else, producers. I think it's all about waiting out and, and being patient for it to happen, whatever the thing is.
And not forcing it.
Not forcing it. When you start forcing it, there's times you can force things, but it never becomes 100% then. But it does get to a make and do, and you move on, kind of thing. And sometimes it's, the force element is warranted at times if there's, live lines or deadlines to meet. But trying to make things happen. Love it. Yeah, live line. I prefer to say live lines. Making things happen organically. And this is why I say patience, because when you do, you get the best.
And live lines, if I can go on a tangent, what's the deal with it 7 days of the week? It should be the strong, shouldn't it? Shouldn't it?
You mean like 7 days make 1 week? Yes, we when it comes to Rastafari, we sort of play around with words because we think words are, have elements of power to. Like we don't like saying the word benefit. When you say benefit in a Jamaican colloquial term, you're saying bend to fit. So when you say it's for your benefit, so if you're going to bend it to fit it, it can't be right in the first place. Terminologies like that we tend to mess around with. You see what I'm saying?
That is genius, though. That is genius because we don't realize like what we're even saying. I feel like people a lot of times. I love that. That is like critical thinking in its best form, almost.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Katie, producer of Weird Music Podcast. I want to give a big shout out to Voodoo Ranger. Live rangerously.
Well, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. Just want to let y'all know we've got these hand-dyed, ice-dyed Weird Music Podcast hoodies and also tees. If you'd like one, let us know. We'd love to get you one. And a big thank you to the geniuses over at Thrax CBD for sponsoring us with their amazing products. Also want to give a big thank you to J&J Distribution, Ohio's premier Delta 8 and CBD wholesale supplier. Retailers, check out their brands Cloud 8, Compassionate Buds, and Zaza. Got links in the description. And yeah, much love, y'all. Now back to the episode. So I want to talk about what you've learned from the course of your career in being a leader and really what's involved in being a leader that's a great leader. Specifically, what's the most impactful lesson that you've learned in your career about what it takes to lead in the right way?
The lesson I've learned is that you got to always be aware of outside influences, where you've got a collection of guys that believe in each other. That's why they formulated as an act. But there's always outside forces that can lead individuals to believe that they're more relevant in the whole scheme of things than what they really are. So it's like many people can become legends in their own mind, and they break off, form another situation, and you look around and nothing's happened after that. It was all because someone sort of said, hey, you could be doing that by yourself. You don't need them for this. There's a lot of that happens when it comes to bands and, formulating and everything else. And, it's the outside influence. And a lot of the times, many bands are broken because there was an outside influence. Sometimes influence is for the better. Sometimes it's for, to make a change because, something's actually ran its course. But that's to me, the most significant thing to look out for. It's the outside influence, ones that come around and can say, you don't need this, you can do that. And before you know it, it's anarchy.
How, in the perfect world, how would you handle a situation like that where you have an awareness that there are some outside influences? Then what do you do?
Well, sometimes you try and sort of absorb the situation, and what you find that it happens anyway. What I found over the years, no matter how you say, well, hang on, don't you realize this and that's happening? That person or the individual or the collective of individuals seem to want to ride with that outside influence. If you see what I'm saying. So I've learned over the years that once someone makes their mind up to do something or be somewhere, it's in a roundabout way, it's telling me, well, this experience between myself or ourselves and a particular entity has ran its course. Let's move on. And I also believe that when anything happens, it happens for a reason. And it's not all the time you will know what that reason is when it actually happens. Sometimes it'll take a year, sometimes it'll take 10 years, sometimes it'll take, a whole score of years before you look back and go, oh, I see why that had to happen the way it did. All right, let me move on with it. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes situations leave you feeling very unpleasant about that particular incident. But when you look back on over the years, especially if you've got you're spiritual motivated, you tend to want to believe that you're spiritually driven and you're driven in the right directions. And there are going to be times when the directions you're driven, you don't understand why you're driven in that way. But so because I think along those lines, I sort of try and learn to adjust when that situation's happening and try to look out for the reason why it happened afterwards. Especially, something you can't do nothing, absolutely nothing about, but there's always a reason, because I always believe there's a spiritual being greater than myself that's guiding me. And for whatever reasons, what happens, you got to accept that's the reason why it's happening. And that's how I feel a lot of the times. Our first record label, Island Records, we signed up with them and we did 3 albums, and then we were, kicked off the label. We didn't know the reasons why. Well, years go by and you stop and you say, hang on, probably was the best thing that ever happened to us. Because look what happened afterwards. I mean, the moment we got kicked off the label, which was 1980, the earlier part of 1980, by the end of 1980, we landed in the United States. Took off like a rocket. You see what I'm saying? Because all the time we were at the label, for example, we were led to believe that nobody knew the band from a can of paint. So we got knocked off the label, accepted it, cried in our beers at first, no money, no record label, no recording deal, and landed in the United States. Everything started to go upwards. So there's a reason. Sometimes you don't understand it, sometimes you dislike it, and and then it starts to reveal itself as time goes by. I mean, it doesn't work for everybody, but I know that kind of mindset works for me.
I love it. It's like there's greater forces at play at all times. And to be a great leader, it's to really be at the spearhead of letting go to those forces.
Yes, exactly,
I love that.
Cameron. To learn how to let go. That's the most important thing, and I've noticed, matter of fact, that's the common thread through all the questions you've asked me. There's a time when you got to learn how to let go and when to let go. And then you continue from there.
I want to put a magnifying glass on you, the idea that everything happens for a reason. I go in and out of good days and bad days. And on days where I'm more anxious, I kind of, I don't necessarily have that trust that everything's happening for a reason. But, then a few days later, I'm in a great mood and I have that trust. Right. And looking back when your younger self, crying into your beers, like, have you always had that faith that everything happens for a reason? Have you found yourself kind of at any points in your life maybe lose that faith? And can you kind of talk to me how that's been restored in your past?
Of course. There's times when everything happens for a reason. That was unacceptable. Let's try and put it right. Let's try and not let it go that way. All that kind of thing. And, and you find that this is why I'm telling you what I'm telling you, because I've realized over the years that it's going to happen anyway. You see what I'm saying? You force it and it happens. Almost like a relationship. You got a marriage or a relationship, ongoing one, and all of a sudden it starts to go pear-shaped and you're trying to make the best of it, and it just keeps going worse and better. And, it finally disintegrates and you look back on it and says, what the hell was that about? You sort of get over it and you get on and you start and say, well, guess what? Especially what I was going through. Why were you going through that? Well, because you weren't happy with the situation, but you're trying to make the best of it. And you'll say, well, you did try and make the best of it, didn't you? He says, yeah. And was it working? No. And you moved on? Yeah. Are you better off? When you look back on it, hindsight, no pun intended, it's, you're better off. That's how I look at it. So this is why I keep saying, anytime things happen, it happens for a reason, and you just don't know at the time because of how emotionally charged you are when it's happening.
It's so tough to get out of the perspective of like the right now circumstance.
Yeah. Well, I've been there where you try to, almost like putting a square peg into a round hole. You see what I'm saying? And all you're doing is bruising the corners. Yeah, it's like
that's a metaphor.
All right.
What other advice can you share, just from the perspective of not as much being a leader, but a bandmate, and what's involved in, through all the ups and downs of being in a band? What's most important when it comes to being a great bandmate?
Listening. I think it's all about listening, and also it's also all about going back and reflect on what you've heard and what you've said. Because not all the time you say certain things and hear certain things that make sense at the time you've heard them and said them. So you go back, and then at the end of the day, you try not to have any regrets because you know why you said it. But I say listening is one of the greater assets. What else would I think when it comes to listeners? I say listening is the key. And another key as well is always try and bring something to the table that's original. Because I find originality has more longevity in the end than something that's churned out, not really coming from you, not really coming from the heart. And sometimes things that come from the heart take more time to recognize than something that's there hitting you in the face, is what I'm saying. But I find being original in your personality, in how you conduct yourself, in how you perform music, the type of music you intend to create, that kind of thing always gets a second chance around to be looked into. Like I said, time could be the barrier for that looking into to connect. But that's where I'm coming from, to be original and to listen.
You bring up a massive question, though, which is how to be original. Like, all artists are drawing from the history of art, and everything is being, reblended. But
true,
how does one become as original as they can be? What is involved in that?
I think it involves, it's almost like, the Venn diagram when you have
the overlap,
3 circles, right? Yeah, and all this, and all my musical styles. I love blues. I love jazz. A little bit of rock, not too intense, like Slipknot is a bit for me, but I like it nevertheless, but to an extent, because it's energy driven. There's pop music, of course. You name music, of course. There's reggae and there's dancehall, and you listen to all these music, and you sort of have your Venn diagram, and you know what your weaknesses are as an artist. Some artists have more strength in their lyric writing than in their vocal ability. You got some that can't write any lyrics at all, but are incredible as a vocalist, for example. You got some that are not either lyrically driven or vocally driven, but they're better on their instruments. And you got some that are neither of those, but they know how to organize or produce. And it's all about this Venn diagram that have these things, what overlaps. You find that there's that originality that creeps in because you've liked a bit of everything and you sort of picked from everything and you've sort of churned something out. Because not everybody's going to like the same style of music that you do. Not everybody's going to have the ability that you have as a vocalist. Not everybody's going to have the ability that you have as a songwriter. So you sort of originated yourself or become original because of the things you've selected in your Venn diagram. You get what I mean?
Yeah. So it's almost like originality. The foundation of it is deep reflection.
Right. It's almost, and it becomes subconscious as well. Because there's a reason why you've sort of drawn for all these styles of music, not really knowing the reasons why you've been attracted to them in the first place.
Yeah, it's like, why
For
do we like what
example,
we like? Like,
right, exactly.
yeah.
So like my earlier years as a musician, obviously Bob Marley came at the top of the list. His energy, his art of lyric writing. Then I had Burning Spear as well. Then there was the Abyssinians. Then when I come into the R&B world, bands like the Pointer Sisters I admired, George Benson, and War, the Crusaders. And then I sort of went onto lyrics, and there was Gil Scott-Heron, who was the master lyricist as far as I'm concerned, where he got really into the mind in a deep kind of way and sort of used a lot of metaphorical, symbols in what he has to say, in regards to especially where he came from. The backyard was Washington, D.C. and American politics. So me meshing all that together has helped to formulate Steel Pulse and formulate the way I go about writing. Like Bob Marley's a very clever lyric writer, but there's a certain energy that Burning Spear has that leans more towards the Rastafari that I imagine as Rastafari, if you see what I'm saying. Because Burning Spear, especially in his early years, it was as roots as you can get. This is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's, like I said, Gil Scott-Heron had me started to look at lyrics a little bit different than how the average reggae musician coming out of Jamaica would look at it. So where Jamaican reggae seem to lean towards their issues that are happening in Jamaica, their social issues, mine becomes more of it on a universalist level, because I'm listening to someone who's looking at politics and their issues from a different perspective. And then me coming from England with my experience, putting all that together, there goes the Venn diagram once again. This is what I'm saying. So that's how it is.
It's almost like one of the things that's allowed you to be as successful as you have been is your ability to draw inspiration from diverse places and
exactly
mix it up.
Exactly.
Wow. If you could go back to the David that was originally getting inspired by these artists you just mentioned, and if you could give them any advice about what's to come and how to be ready for it, what would you say to your younger self?
The advice I'd give to my younger self, number one, I would have to be aware at the time with my younger self that my younger self never imagined that I would be here speaking to the likes of you, for example, and also be a traveling man with any element of success whatsoever. My younger self was the first thing from my mind when it came to my younger self, that I'd be internationally known. Is what I'm saying. And what I would tell my younger self, it was to prepare myself for this onslaught of fame and fortune, or whatever you want to call it, or fame and no fortune, in my instance. I would say, be prepared. Don't be overwhelmed, and take things in its stride, and pay more attention than what you did before. That's what I'm saying. Because I think the success, or any success that we've had, has been marred because of us not paying attention to what was really out there as an industry. So that's what I'll tell myself, is to be prepared and be more concerning about the industrial, contractual side of the industry than just going out there willy-nilly playing music. Because you find that somewhere along the line, it will affect how you go about your writing and how you go about relating to others. I've seen a number of musicians who think they've been cheated over the years by labels, and they start putting bitter things on the internet, airing how they feel as individuals, because they weren't quite expecting what was going to happen in regards to their career. So because I know where it's coming from, I take it, or what they say, with a pinch of salt, because I've seen them hurt. But ordinary Joe Blow wouldn't look at it like that. They would say, what are they venting about? But because I'm coming from the same backyard, the same experience, I know why someone could be angry about where they stand in their career in this moment in time. So that's what I'll be telling myself. Be prepared and be more in keep with the industry and the contractual obligations that they offer.
That's great advice, especially for any artists out there listening. Like, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
David, thank you so much for joining me here, for spending this time. This has been illuminating. I'm so glad we got to talk here. And yeah, if you listen this far, we got links in the description. Steel Pulse Tour. Tickets are flying. Get those tickets. We got a link for you. David, just a few more questions for you as we're wrapping up here.
Mm-hmm.
In, reflecting back on those moments late at night when you're creating, those raw, vulnerable moments of you and, tapped into the creative energy on the other side and that spiritual moment. Do you ever struggle or have conflicts with feelings like self-doubt? Or have you ever struggled with being vulnerable? And like, what kind of self-talk or advice maybe has allowed you to, be vulnerable and has allowed you to, not let self-doubt keep you from reaching your potential?
Self-doubt, it's like what I said in the beginning. Self-doubt is really attributed to outside influences for the most part. Yes, because there's times when a comment is made and no one's actually knows the course or the journey that you have taken and intend to take. So there's times when you start doubting yourself when someone makes a comment that something's not happening in the way it could be. And you start believing, well, hang on, I used to do it like this. Why am I doing it like that now? And then you start doubting yourself. Self-doubt comes also when you don't do anything on a consistent basis. That's when self-doubt kicks in as well. When you start something, you stopped, and you're about to start it again, then you're asking yourself, well, did they like it the last time? Do I like it this time? And this is where self-doubt comes in. The last self-doubt I can remember is when we released the Mass Manipulation album 4 years ago. If you follow the history of Steel Pulse, it took a good part of 11 years since the album, before that album. And that was all to do with a lot of self-doubt after a while, where we're off the radar for quite some time and thinking that, the band might not serve any or be of any relevance anymore because it's been that long. It's over the, what have they done lately kind of thing, creeping in. So I did an album, had 12 songs on it, and I'm listening to all the songs and I'm saying, hang on, we usually have a song that sort of gives like a completion, gives you a conclusion, something that you can attach to and say, make it thought provocative, and you can turn the whole thing around. So the album now becomes a concept. And 12 songs were written, and I didn't hear one song that I thought that could have become the reason for that album to be written in the first place. So I wrote 4 more. But the doubt came in that caused me to write 4 more. I mean, in the end, I'm glad that the doubt came in, because I thought afterwards I wrote 4 relatively strong songs after that. If you're familiar with the album, it was Nations of the World was one of them. Another one was World Gone Mad. And I covered Higher Love, the famous Spencer Davis. Steve, I'm trying to remember his name. We come from the same neck of the woods. I can't remember his better name. Called Spencer Davis. Stevie Winwood. That was one of, and then there was a song called Rise. So those are the 4 songs that I attached to the album to make the album feel as if it was more relevant. But it started with self-doubt. You got to be mindful of that.
So self-doubt's not always a bad thing.
No, it's not always a bad thing, but sometimes what self-doubt does, it makes you not jump on board at the time you could have. This is what I'm saying.
Mm.
It just so happens that this particular Selfdoubt became a success. You know, the tracks that are featured now, they sort of had added more fuel to the concept of the album and added more fuel to the people have turned around and says, wow, how did you predict that all this was going to happen? You know, the masks, the wars, the diseases and everything else, you know, what we've mentioned in all these songs, and exploitation, human trafficking was another song that was on the album, and it became headline news for the most part. Every time I turned on CNN, it was human trafficking, and that song was written 3-4 years before. And I'm saying, oh, wait a minute. So yes, it was like exactly that kind of thing happening.
And everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason.
Mm.
So self-doubt can be all right where at times where you question yourself. Are you making the right maneuvers? Are you, so that's where, but then you have to conclude that doubt. That's what I'm saying.
With action.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
You reaching the level of fame you have, obviously it can be overwhelming, and it reestablishes so much in terms of what one might value in their life. One day, you're average Joe. The next day, you're playing on massive stages alongside legends to sold out screaming crowds. Like, I'm curious if your accomplishments and everything that you've achieved in your career, what that's taught you about what really, really matters. Like, to give an example, like we have like an idol of something we want to achieve. And then when we achieve it, we kind of realize that goal was kind of empty and it wasn't true fulfillment. It wasn't true satisfaction. And with someone like yourself, who's accomplished things at such, those rock star dreams, like what has that taught you about what really matters most to you in terms of what brings you fulfillment?
It's perfection, giving your best. All these acts that I've been blessed to be a part of, like back in 1988, was on tour with Carlos Santana, 89, Bob Dylan, also in the 80s, Robert Palmer, you name it. My thing is perfection. That's what I saw. That's what I witnessed when I was with these individuals. There was perfection, and I think that's what means a lot, because it's the perfection in what they do that stands the test of time. And I always see myself as under par to the perfection that I've bore witness to. If you see what I'm saying, and I like it that way. I like it that way because it makes me keep going. It makes me keep trying. It makes me still be pretty adamant about getting this thing right, making something be its best according to the energy I've got left in me. So that's where I am with that.
It's like the pursuit of quality is inspiration in and of itself.
Yes.
And my final question for you, if you could put a piece of advice in all your children and grandchildren's pocket for them to have with them for their whole lives, what would that one piece of advice be?
There's so many of them. One, it might be, my advice would be, even the closest ones to you don't remain constant as far as what you are to expect of them, whether it's a sister, whether it's a parent, whether it's a child that belongs to you. You got to know, always watch out where you don't put all your eggs in the same basket in regards to faith or confidence, because people are people, and it takes one situation that will make that person change that you've never seen before. Because so always look out for change in people. That's what I advise my children. They will not become a surprise to you because you've been looking out for a change. I'm not saying doubt your friends, but understand that people are, human beings that got spirits, and not all the time the spirit's going to be on the same energy. And it's not all the time your spirit's going to have the same energy to receive another person's energy. So I'll always say, watch out for change as far as the way people behave. And no matter how close they are to you, even if it's a family member, just look out for it. This is what I'm saying. Because, I'm just going through what I've experienced. I can only share my experiences with my children. This is what I'm saying.
Well, David, this interview, wow. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing all your wisdom, taking these questions in stride. David, thank you so much.
All right. Hear me out, Camion. All right, respect. How can I put it? I've been asked many questions over the years, but nothing along these lines, if you see what I'm saying, which is pretty interesting. When one wants to put together their memoirs, they start looking in that direction now, if you see what I'm saying, because many questions you've asked, I never really thought about it before, but once you start getting that kind of juice stirred up within me, they're quite interesting what you've asked me. It makes me want to look even closer into what I'm about and what to expect of life and people.
That means so much to hear you say.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much. Everyone out there listening, links in the description, the most recent album, get your tickets to Steel Pulse and Lettuce Tour. Check out their website, follow on socials. David, much love, my man.
Thank you. One heart.
Well, there you have it. Thanks for tuning in. And a big thank you to Ticket Relief for sponsoring Weird Music Podcast. If you're an event organizer out there, Ticket Relief can help you keep your fees low while making sure all aspects of ticketing go smoothly. As well, Ticket Relief plants trees on behalf of every ticket sold with the events they work with. So, yeah, we've got a link in the description for you to check them out. And thank you to the rest of our sponsors. Much love, y'all.